welcome you to the start of today's webinar, which is about increasing the take-up of self-service. Self-service we've seen a rapid growth of over the years. It started to be just on the voice channel, and increasingly is becoming much more sophisticated with things like mobile apps and also with websites for a lot of self-service. So in order to explore how we increase self-service, we've got two great speakers lined up today. We have, I'm delighted to welcome back for, I think this is your third, is it, or your fourth webinar with us, Justin?
Yep.
Justin Robbins, who's with HDI and ICMI, which I think, if you're not familiar with the initials, I think they're branded now as initials. It started off as the Help Desk Institute and the International Customer Management Institute. I think it's now preferred to be ICMI. So welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Johnny. Happy to be here.
And you're going off after you're currently at conference, and you're heading off to the ICMI conference, which I think is one of the bigger ones, and certainly a lot bigger than a lot of the UK conferences, which is what, 1,200 people in Vegas?
We will be with 1,200 people in Las Vegas. I head there tomorrow. The conference starts Monday.
Ah, wonderful. Well, we're delighted to get Justin, as he's just about to change roles, but he's very graciously agreed to appear at a webinar before he does that, and we hope in his new role we can still work with Justin in the future. And also delighted to be welcomed by a regular favourite to our webinar programme, who I think has probably appeared on well over a dozen webinars over the years with us, a familiar face. Welcome back to Mike Murphy from Genesis.
Thank you, Jonty. Thank you, Jonty. Nice to be here. And hello, everybody. Slightly underdressed compared to Justin. Apologies, but I'll make amends for that next time.
And well, perhaps next time we all have to wear bow ties. So
I love that idea. Love that
idea. Justin's trademark is a bow tie, and I think, Justin, you said in rehearsal you have how many bow ties?
I don't even want, over 100. It's
over 100.
It's a silly amount of bow ties.
Well, that's certainly 98 more than me. I have two, one for singing in the choir and one for which I do wear occasionally, belong to my father. Right, so we're going to be talking about increasing the take-up of self-service. Just a reminder, if you want to watch a replay of today's webinar, it's on callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. We're having a discussion today in the chat room, running alongside that, which is callcenterhelper.com/chat. So very simple to log in. Just follow the link there and put in your first name, your last name, and email. There's a big advantage of being in the chat room. You can talk and network with your peers, ask questions of each other, ask questions of the panelists. But you can also download the webinar slides. So here's the link here, download webinar slides. And so you just click on that link and you can get a copy of the slides. There is an added advantage of being in the chat room as well, that if you have any tips on how to increase the take-up of self-service, just put #tip. And here is a rather nice bottle of champagne that will be shipped out to for the winning tip. Though if you prefer, we can ship a box of chocolates, or indeed an Amazon voucher if you prefer that to a similar value. So that's at the chat room, callcenterhelper.com/chat. And we've been asking the question in the chat room, what types of self-service does your company offer? So we've had Sue, who said password reset, knowledge base, log instance and requests. We've had Alona, who said consult card balance, card activation, and check order status. Order status certainly been going up a lot. Donna has been saying a payment kiosk pay online self-service customer portal. So I guess that's the ability for a customer to pay a bill. My daughter's gone off to do her master's at university, and we've been paying a lot of those bills online, which is quite useful rather than having to do it over the phone. Christian says we report a fault on the road or pavement, pay for various services and apply for various services. That's certainly turned out to be a very popular one for local government, which is report a pothole in the role. Now I've seen somewhere you can actually get a little app. You go out in the street, you take a picture of the pothole, it puts the GPS coordinates of the pothole in, and you can send that off to the council, so they know exactly where it is, rather than saying it's on the corner of High Street and the main road.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Vanessa says, who's from London, says we have forms, technical help desk, knowledge content pages, a chat bot, private face messages, and Twitter as well. Herman says report a fault or request a service or product. So that's quite a good one, logging details. Will from Shipley says we use self-service for request and instant logging, altering personal details and locations. So, Mike, it seems there's a sort of wide variety of different applications out there that seem to be very popular.
They really are, and it's great to hear, to be honest. It's you know, good examples, interesting examples, and I mean, it's kind of, it feels good really, because if we just understand why the customer is contacting us, and then if we're able to just provide that information before they, you know, when they have that need, and they can just find it online, that's perfect. That is the great example of self-service. Okay. Obviously, some other products maybe have a bit more sort of challenging. It's not necessarily so easy to kind of present that information, but where possible, they're great examples of self-service in action.
Okay, well, we're going to jump across to a poll now, and you've all got these lovely applications. I want to ask the question, when did you last make changes to your self-service system? Did you do it in the past week? Did you do it in the past month? Have you done it in the past year? Have you done it in the past 3 years? Or have you not actually done it since the system was put in? So I think this is going to be quite fascinating. Justin, I don't know if you've got any guesses of what you think is the most likely answer.
Ooh, I'm gonna say it's somewhere between the past year. I think we'll see a lot in the past year, but I'm also kind of nervous. I think we might see quite a bit that say not since it was put in.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the results. We've got a sample size of 68 on this poll. So the results are 20% in the past week, 40% in the past month, 23% in the past year, and 14% not since the system was put in. Mike, that's 14% never changed it. That's a little bit worrying, isn't it?
Well, I think it's I suppose, if you will, so we got a couple of things here to kind of put some context to. So first of all, I think people are more used to seeing their websites being developed more frequently. So I kind of get the idea of the per past week, past month for the kind of online stuff. But I would imagine from the telephony point of view, the more sort of like traditional self-service tools, that's where I would imagine the kind of not since it was put in type scores would feature. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of good to see that the online tools are kind of ever changing. I think that's very helpful. It's appropriate. But we kind of need to see some work, if you like, across the whole board really. So from that point of view, looking forward to the content of the webinar. Excellent.
So hopefully, I mean, the good news is that 60% have updated in the to at least some degree in the past month. I suppose the flip side of that is there's 40% that haven't. So that may be one immediate takeaway, is to have a look at tuning up your existing systems if you're looking to increase the take-up. So I'm delighted to pass the baton now across to Justin Robbins from HDMI and ICMI. So Justin, if you'd like to share with your thoughts about self-service and how that could be increased.
Yeah, absolutely, Johnny. I'm excited to do that. Let me pull up the presentation here for everyone as we get started. So I'll just say in advance, if there are any questions, happy to answer those after today's webinar. Don't hesitate to reach out to me on any of the channels there. But so I want to just talk through a few things when it comes to self-service. In my role, specifically with ICMI, I get to do a lot of research looking at contact centers across the world and what they're doing, but I also get to talk to a lot of consumers and hear how they're responding to what contact centers are doing. So I want to talk a little bit about what is the current state of self-service. Then I want to give some quick hit ideas on if you are here on today's webinar and you've not yet implemented self-service, or you're planning to implement self-service in a new channel or for a new type of contact, I want to give some tips on how you can do that well. I want to give some tips to everyone here on how you can improve your existing self-service. So whether it's the 60% of you that made those changes in the past month or the 40% that haven't, I want to help everyone have better insight into what types of changes you should be making, and how do you look for the answer on what needs to be changed. And then lastly, for those of you that are maybe thinking, I don't know, is self-service something I want to invest in? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the effort involved? I just want to talk through a few of the benefits that we've seen organizations achieve when they've deployed self-service. And Johnny, I know you know this, but for everyone on the webinar, I mean, my background is running contact centers. Worked in my first contact center 19 years ago, started as an agent, and have honestly grown up through my career in contact centers. So, you know, when I talk about these benefits, it's not some theoretical research that I've done. These are things that I've actually seen in the organizations that I've been part of. So a few things I want to say about self-service. First, when we went out and asked consumers, so we said, we want to understand what are the channels that are important to you. 87% of consumers say that self-service is a very important channel of communication for companies to be supporting. And Johnny, Mike, everyone who's on here, when we dug deeper and said, why is that? We found, and maybe you've seen this to be true, customers, they want to help themselves. I even think about myself, where we've given the examples of wanting to check the balance of your accounts, or wanting to look at the order status of a purchase that you might have made. Even, you know, really crazy. So speaking of me being in Nashville, I was driving to the hotel from the airport, and I saw what looked like a giant vending machine for cars. And I'm thinking, are my eyes deceiving me? And I looked up, and here's this organization called Carvana that has taken the experience of having to go to a used car dealer, which you know, I know from buying cars in the States can be a really just terrible experience. And they found a way to automate it, to create a self-service experience for buying a used car, and they do it well. So what we find is that for a majority of your customers, no matter what industry you're in, or what you've done, or what you think you can do, want to get it out of the way. Customers want the self-service experience. They want to help them themselves. So I think that's important to say right out the gate. Another really interesting finding that we found when talking to consumers is over half said that self-service is as important as the inbound free phone service that your organization is supporting today. And again, I look at the organizations, particularly in the states that I work with, and inbound, that free inbound phone service is the majority of what they're thinking about as an inside organization. But consumers, a majority are looking beyond that inbound free phone service. So I think that's also important. And the reason I say that it's important that that's what our consumers want is because when I talk to executives, over 3/4 of executives, 77.5%, tell me that the customer experience is their most important strategic performance measure. And think about that for a second. The customer experience is their most important strategic measure. And so to me, that's saying that we as contact centers cannot have this inward mindset to how we're offering channels of service. We can't be thinking, what do we want to be doing? If the customer experience is our most important strategic performance measure, we need to be thinking, what do the customers want from their experience? And what our research is showing at ICMI, and what I've seen played out time and time again in contact centers really across the globe, is that self-service is going to be a critical factor for us to win at the customer experience when it comes to really delivering great service. So maybe you've already been convinced. You're thinking, okay, this is great. I want to do self-service. So what are a few things that you need to be thinking through when it comes to implementing self-service well? The first is to begin with something that we call a customer access strategy. And really it's a series of about 8 to 10 different questions working through where do we want to offer this service? What contact types? What questions do we need to ask? Where are we going to set it up? Is it going to be a web app? Is it going to be on our website? What does that look like? Really, it's a great series of questions. That's one of those things that if you go and look, kind of on the web search, you can find templates. I have a template that if people want to have to dig into, but the point here is it's important to be intentional about self-service. I remember working for one executive, called me into the office and she said, Justin, we want to deploy a new self-service portal in 2 weeks, so go make it happen. And maybe you've been in that place and you just have to react. What I'm saying is if you want your self-service, if you really want to see the take-up increased, you need to be strategic up front, and we recommend a customer access strategy. Another thing that we recommend is really leaning into your frontline agents in the design of that system. When I ask contact centers, what are some of the goals of self-service, it's often to move the redundant, the simple, the highly repetitive tasks away from a live agent and to automate it or to make it easier so that their agents can work on more complex, more complicated types of customer interactions. So then who better than the agent to help inform how that system is designed? We found that when we go to our agents for insight, they can walk us through what are the common kind of trigger points when a customer calls in about those types of interactions. They can also help test the effectiveness of that self-service portal to see, does it really work? That actually brings me to my third point when you're looking to implement new self-service systems, is that we have to assess whether or not it's effective. So right now I'm going to talk specifically to that 14% of you who haven't made any changes since the installation. And I want to ask the question is, have you not made those changes because you know it's working really well? Or have you not made those changes because you haven't been able to assess whether or not it's effective? I'm reminded, and I told this story during rehearsal to Johnny and Mike, is back in the 1990s, there was a rotisserie oven. It was called the Showtime rotisserie oven, and their entire sales pitch was set it and forget it. This idea that once you put your chicken or whatever you were going to cook into the Showtime rotisserie oven, you didn't have to worry about it until it was done. And a mistake I see contact centers making is believing that the same is true for their self-service systems, that once they've built it, that they can forget about it. And so it's really important that as you implement and begin your journey in self-service, that you have a way to assess whether or not it's effectively helping customers, or whether or not, to the point of the question that I think we started with today, is, or are customers still calling in? Have you built your self-service systems, but customers don't trust it, it's not working well, they're having to move to another channel, right? So be thinking through, does it really work? And then the last piece, and maybe you've already experienced this, especially maybe some of you that are using artificial intelligence or chatbots, it's important to make it easy to access a live agent. So if I'm interacting with your self-service portal interface, whatever it happens to be, and I need to go further, I need a live agent, it's very important that we have designed that into our self-service system, that if I need that live agent, it is very easy for me to move from that self-service experience to the assisted service through a live agent. So those are just a few tips. And one of the things I love about these webinars is in the chat room, you're going to have these opportunities to share some of your tips as well. So definitely encourage you, if there are some things that you've done when you've implemented new self-service that you're thinking you'd love to share with people, we would love to see those come in as well. For those of you that are using self-service, though, I want to talk about a few things to help you improve what you've got going on today. And again, if you do these things, you are going to see that it is going to help increase the take-up of self-service in your organization, because self-service really is meant to work well when we get it right. So what are some things that we can do to make sure we get it right with our existing systems? The first thing is to make sure your agents have the tools and resources to educate your customers. Whether that is to the example that we started with, a customer calls in and they just want to check, they just want to be sure. Make sure your agents have the tools and resources to say, the system that you're using online is the exact same system that I use. And so you absolutely can trust that that information is up to date. Or perhaps maybe you've just launched new self-service, and so make sure that your agents have language, or they have some of the advantages and the proposition points to explain why this self-service is important for customers to be using. Another important piece, and this, Mike, I suspect that you're probably going to talk about this a little bit, is it really is important when we talk about a seamless customer experience. It's also really important for the agents to have a seamless experience and for all of that customer information to be in one place. When I look at today's contact center, and whether you want to call it omni-channel, whether you want to call it multi-channel done really well, whether you want to call it chaotic, the reality of today's contact center is we are using a lot of systems. We are working with a lot of channels. And increasingly, it is important for us to make sure that they are integrated together, that we have a comprehensive view of the customer journey. And so part of that is making sure that our self-service systems are integrated to our total contact center systems. A third thing that's important for us to be remembering is we need to be tracking and analyzing our data that's coming through. Do we have certain self-service options that we've created and customers just aren't utilizing them? Then we need to be able to look at the data and derive some conclusions on what is it about that self-service in that particular channel or for that contact type that's not working. Or perhaps you're seeing that certain channels are just overloaded and people are going there in just astonishing numbers. And so maybe you need to be asking the question of how do we build that out? How do we put more benefit, more information into that particular part of the system? And we can only make those decisions effectively if we're tracking and analyzing our data. And the last piece with really improving the take-up and improving your existing self-service systems is we can't just assume that we've created it, we sent the initial message out, and that people automatically see the value in it. It's important for us as the leaders in our contact centers to be continuously reinforcing the value that thoughtful and effective self-service provides. And what you're going to find is that if you've made sure you've got an integrated approach to self-service, you're tracking and analyzing your data, that you're also then able to go back to your senior executive and say, this is the return on investment that we've seen through our self-service systems. The research that we show is the greatest return, often the greatest return on investment is reducing overall operational costs in the contact center. And again, you won't know that. You won't be able to reinforce that value if you're not tracking and analyzing your data and seeing how your contact center operates today versus the improvements that you can make moving forward. So before I hand things over, just a few more things that I really want to say about self-service. And when it is done thoughtfully, when it is done well, you're going to see a few things happen. And these are things that I've seen with my own customers, and I've seen my clients have this happen with their customers, is when you've built self-service well and you've measured its effectiveness and you're constantly tuning the dials to make sure that it's right for your customers, because they want to help themselves, when they are able to do that, they're able to go to your website, they're able to go to your app, they're able to interact with your chatbot, and it works. They're going to have improved confidence, not only in your products and services, but in your organization. And one of the things that we've also seen from research, right, is that it is more effective, it is more cost effective, there is greater return for us if we focus on keeping our existing customers and building them as advocates than trying to acquire a new one. And so self-service, to me, it builds that brand loyalty within our existing customer base, and then they become advocates for who we are and what we do. And so self-service actually becomes a tool for our organizations to gain in popularity and gain in customers because they see that we build it well and it's easy for them to use. Another thing that I really love about self-service is it truly can be bespoke to who you are as a customer, and that interaction can be individualized to who you are, whether it's based off of automated SMS messages that now I can interact with on my phone, or it's built into the web apps that web app that's integrated with my account and knows my preferences, knows what I like, knows my dislikes, and so truly individualized. But the other thing, and I see my research has shown this, Forrester, Gardner, you look across the board at industry research firms, and one of the things that they show is most important for customers is to have their issue resolved immediately and efficiently. Often we hear the words articulated as respect my time. And what we see with self-service is self-service provides one of the most immediate resolutions to a customer, and it can often do it in the most efficient way. And so when I think about what has been important to me in running my contact centers, and what I think about is important to today's consumer and today's executive, to me, self-service is one of those things that should be an obvious win. It's one of those things that I think is critically important to the future success of the contact center, and honestly, something that I would really encourage everyone on this webinar to make sure that they're not only using in their organization, but they're constantly looking at how they can refine it, how they can tune the dials to do it well. So with that, Johnny, I'm going to toss things back over to you here as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Justin. Some great feedback from that. I think there's some great takeaways there. Certainly, the using the rotisserie analogy, self-service is not set it and forget it. I think it'd be rather nice if it was, but it certainly isn't. I think there's certainly, Justin, some value, as you said, in reinforcing the value of self-service, particularly with customers, particularly if they don't trust what you've, the overall system and are used to phoning in. That could be a way of deflecting call volume. And I thought it was very interesting that that self-service does tick a lot of the boxes, and that it's both immediate and efficient. And I thought certainly that your point you made about the return on investment, that where self-service has given you a return on investment, rather than just going, wasn't that good, actually taking that back to the board, to the management team, and saying, this is what we thought, this is actually what we've got. And then that can then in turn help the business case for more self-service. If you've got a track record, it's not just a sort of a hypothetical, you've got some experience in doing that. So I certainly think some great things there. Well, we're going to jump across to the chat room. Hopefully we're not going to have any more interruptions of service. We lost a video feed from here a little while ago as two BT engineers turned up in the street outside the office and cut our cable. We shouted out the window, what's going on, we've lost service. And they said, oh, it's yours then. Luckily, they seem to screw it back together again very quickly. So if we do drop out, there's a reason for that. But, the advantage with the cloud-based webinar system is that we were able to keep the whole thing going even if we were lost, and we do have Rachel on standby. Okay, so top tips and questions. We've got a tip in from Andrew, who says, make self-service simple. Don't ask unnecessary questions. Only ask what's needed to serve, and not collect customer data. I think that's quite a good one.
Love that.
A good one there. Certainly applies to surveys. And a question from Dominic. What is the view on self-service versus assisted service versus proactive service? Mike, I know you're covering a number of these in your talk. Do you want to defer that until later, or do you want to have a pop now?
Oh, no. I think so. A great example, obviously, of the proactive service is kind of keeping me informed on the status of my claim or the status of my order, and like you're anticipating what the customer is going to ask for, and therefore just provide the information. So obviously, we're seeing an awful lot of applications, especially using SMS, where that's a really easy way to do that, and I can sort of track, or not necessarily track, but just I'm getting updates from my supplier of where my order, where my claim, where my whatever it is, and that's really, really helpful. The idea then of the sort of assisted service, You know, I think that there's absolutely a role to play for that, because what we start to see as more and more becomes self-service for the straightforward things, the more complex things, obviously we need some help. And I think this starts to kind of open the door a little bit upon where we see some exciting sort of things coming through in the future, Jonty, especially around the automation, really like this idea of like maybe doing some part of the conversation with the customer in automation, and then some part of the conversation with an agent. And that's proven to be quite an interesting sort of opportunity. So from that perspective, I think, you know, all of those sort of circumstances matter very much in the strategy.
Excellent. I suppose it all depends on what's appropriate at the right time. Mike says, here's a tip. Take time to understand what your customers are asking. Don't provide answers to questions they aren't interested in. I see Justin nodding there.
Yeah, you know, I think this is really important, but I also think that this ties into the tip beforehand when we talk about proactive service. I think what the challenge for our contact centers is to take time to understand what they're asking, and often we have to then read between the lines of what do they really want to know, what are they really trying to find out, and rather than say, you know, the script or the product that we feel like we have to upsell, really take time to say, this is what's going to be best for you, here's how I'm really going to help you with your needs. So I think this is a great tip of just being upfront and pausing to listen to what that customer is truly telling you.
Excellent. And we've had a tip that I think ties into the point that Justin was making earlier. We train our advisors to sell the benefits of self-service, quicker response times, free to use, no postage or call cost, to make the self-service option worth the effort. I think, Justin, you were talking earlier about the need to reinforce the value of self-service with customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Customers and even agents sometime, right? Agents may have a fear that the reason we've created self-service is to put them out of a job. And the research that we've done is showing organizations are not doing that at all. It truly is to enable their agents to work on more complicated, more complex things. So I think that's part of also with that training is this isn't to put you out of a job. This is to help you work on things that are going to be more interesting and more challenging to you professionally.
And we've got a question from Susie. Mike, I don't know if you can do this. Do you find the age of a customer has any impact on whether they want to self-serve?
No, well, so I think obviously there's a broad range there in that particular question, and I know of brands that I've worked with where the customers prefer to call, and that's fine. And if it's a financial product of a significant value, or something to do with pensions or investments and that type of thing, I kind of get the feeling I too want to hear and speak to a living, breathing person and sort of fulfill my requests, especially if there's a decision to be made. But I think it's having that combination, if you will, cater for everybody. And in that sense, I wouldn't be able to say it's like one size fits all for any particular. There is a role for self-service in every sort of business, really, and it's just tuning into what that is and what makes sense, if you like, to your customers.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. You're not going to please all of the people with a self-service app. Some people want the human contact, some people don't, and I think it's about, Mike, as you said, about having the different options. Ben says, here's a tip: regularly track and monitor the rate of people successfully using self-service in order to improve. That's, I think, very important. That don't get too hung up on the number. It's an indicator, I think, rather than should be a target. Christia says, make the online experience as efficient, quick, and easy as possible. Low customer effort will mean customers are more likely to use the self-service option. And I think it's quite an interesting one here, Justin, because making stuff efficient, quick, and easy, that's from a customer perspective, doesn't mean to say it's efficient, quick, and easy for the organization. It can take an awful lot of hard work to make something look or simple from a customer. There's a lot of back-end processing that often has to go in to do that. And often applications are done because they're easy to put out, not necessarily easy for the customers.
Yeah, that's really true. And that's where a lot of people get hung up, honestly, Johnny, is not recognizing that you do need to put work in at the front end, but it is with self-service, even with analytics, is the same thing. if you put the work in up front to design it well, you are going to see those returns, exponentially on the back end. So it may be difficult to set up. That's just the reality of the world that we're in, right? By working in contact centers in today's climate, we are signing up for that. That is our job.
Indeed. And I see it a lot in government forms. It used to be in the old days when a government was filled in by a government employee, the forms were actually very simple, often 6 to 10 questions at most. Now everything can be put online. There's almost a very incremental cost to government. It doesn't cost very much to ask another 10 questions. And what we see is that forms are getting longer and longer because it doesn't actually cost the organization. It just costs the person who's self-serving extra time and effort. So I think that's one of the things that it might be useful information to collect, but it is making stuff more difficult for people to do. And it's like you're important to us, but your time isn't. I think is one of the messages.
Absolutely, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Here's a good technology one. Use proactive live chat, a way of intercepting those who are unable to log or verify themselves, but don't simply answer their question. Help them to drive through the platform to build trust and confidence. I guess, Mike, this requires a certain degree of technical integration to make this work.
Well, a little bit. I mean, like live chat is something which we're very familiar with today. What's often really cute, if you will, is the idea of co-browsing and kind of like not updating, or there's a word I can't think of it at the moment, but basically changing the chat from a traditional sort of messaging chat into a co-browse situation where you can kind of take the customer's hand and guide them through what they have to do together, if you will. And that's kind of proves to be quite an interesting little application for the co-browse. And we've got some customers who are using that, and they quite like that sort of capability, and it kind of helps the consumer in that circumstance. So these kind of tools are there, and they provide a nice sort of useful role, especially in that sort of circumstance. And
we've got a final tip on this section from Ilona, who says, ask the customer asking the question why self-service wasn't satisfactory. So I guess if this is someone's been on self-service, they call through to the contact center and say, I was using your system, got stuck. Actually, rather than going, oh dear, let's help you, actually find out what it was they specifically got stuck on to see if you can help that. I think that's some great feedback there. Well, we're going to, before we jump across to Mike, we're just going to run a quick poll. We're talking about increasing the take-up of self-service. What have you tried to do to increase the take-up of self-service? So you can answer as many of these as you like. Have you fine-tuned the existing application, like tuned it to make it better, easier to use? Have you added new options, new services to self-service to do that? Have you added new channels? For instance, have you added in mobile apps or web self-service or an IVR? Have you tried personalizing the self-service? So rather than having one size fits all, for instance, if you know that someone is contacting you and they've recently ordered something, maybe you put up their delivery status before you put anything else up on the self-service option, or even just give them the delivery service when they're contacting you. Or have you tried some form of promotional activity to increase the take-up? This could be anything from sending out a leaflet to asking your advisors to guide people towards self-service on the websites. Just like to see what you're doing in terms of that. Let's have a look at the sample size. Sample size 69 for this one. Let's just close the results here and share them up on the screen. So 64% fine-tuned their existing self-service application. 48% have added new options. 48% have added new channels. 52%, I was a little surprised that was lower, have increased promotional activity, and 15% have personalized the self-service. Justin, I don't know if you're surprised by the promotional activity. That was one of your key takeaways.
Yeah, I am. It's and I think that's really important because we spend all this time, to the point, time, effort, money to put it there. If we're not positioning it for our customers, I mean, we don't know that they're going to find it. So I think it really is important to for any of us to some degree be promoting once we make self-service available.
Indeed. So I think some quite good ones there. I think, Mike, you're going to be talking about personalization in a minute, which came up quite low. It was only about 15% of people personalizing.
Yeah,
so I think they may be missing a trick there, which I think you were going to be covering as I think one of your customers had recently done that. So good time to hand over to Mike. If you'd like to put your slides up on your screen, and we can go through your presentation.
So is that the right screen displaying, Jonty? I just
yes, we are seeing your presentation there. Yes.
Good. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Good. So yeah, absolutely. Very interesting score there for the personalized question. So thanks for asking that, Jonty. It kind of leads well into my little short deck of slides here. But certainly in the context of self-service, obviously things are changing quite dramatically. I'm delighted to see the amount of effort people are doing to refresh, change, update, modify, listen to the customers, promote the customers. And I suppose, if you like, it's evidence of the customers having that control of their web environment, if you will, in-house and available through colleagues to be able to kind of jump on and sort of make those changes, which is crucial, really. So from that perspective, those things are good to see. Our sort of research and our kind of approach really is to feel that things are kind of moving in a again, same direction, but we've got to get a bit more sort of focused on the individual. And from that perspective, we've got some ideas here we want to share. And obviously as well, I've got a nice case study with a great UK customer of ours who utilized this to great effect in their business. So the idea of personalized and omni-channel really in self-service is kind of the keys I'm going for. And what we know, if you will, is that customers want self-service, and we've kind of touched on this already. They like it. They like it if it's good. Okay, they really don't like it if it's bad. I'm thinking of Nikki, if you like, in that initial question that we had earlier. Why do those customers still feel the need to, or they can't trust the information that they can maybe seeing online, or versus the feel the need that they really have to call in just to check and make sure. So that could be a situation where there's several platforms perhaps. So this idea of silos starts to kind of resonate with me just in trying to figure the right answer for Nikki. But this kind of becomes the problem, because although customers want it, often we are, if you like, challenged internally to be able to deliver it, because, if you will, the infrastructure that I have in my organization, the information isn't necessarily joined up. Maybe I'm kind of offering a new app-based sort of way to self-serve, and that actually isn't integrated rightly into the other parts of my business. So these become little sort of traps that are necessarily hidden, but they can cause the customer to kind of question, hang on, is this really what it's telling me it is? Obviously, we feel that in today's world, we've got to help our customers in that area. And the nice thing is, when we have delivered some of these services to our customers, you can kind of see in those scores what the Genesis platform in this case has been able to do, certainly by way of decreasing the average handle time, increasing the first contact resolution, and then that initial notion that I mentioned about, if you get it right, the customers really love it, and they'll use it again and again and again. So from that perspective, we really believe that there is work to be done here, and lots more work to do. It's certainly a very explosive area. And think about the adverts we see on TV, where we're kind of talking about Alexa in people's lives, and they're kind of okay Google, or I'm hitting my Siri button and sort of asking questions. Our consumers now are starting to get, if you like, used to being able to kind of ask questions and expect answers, and in that sense, they're getting more confident, I think, with your speech-based applications, search engines, different ways of finding information. So these are all going to prove to be very interesting sort of ingredients in the self-service pot going forward. But if we think about today, your customers, remember, are diverse. Regardless of what service you offer, you're going to have a very significant diversity within the customers are calling. And in that sense, I would imagine that traditionally, if you like, a self-service strategy tended to feel like it was one size fits all, and you've got to get yourself into that sort of application that I built for you, Mr. Customer. It's a great way to self-serve, and I hear what you're saying, but actually this is my self-service, so get in there and do it. And when actually it wasn't quite what the customers wanted, and they didn't really feel that they were getting the right answer, and therefore perhaps losing confidence and not necessarily taking up the idea of okay, thanks guys for offering this to me, but actually it's kind of not really delivering what I want. So from that perspective, you know, we've kind of had some learning there, and we're kind of listening to what customers want. And I kind of feel that we're kind of moving now to a situation where to kind of treat customers. Oh, John D, can you hear me?
I can
John
hear
D, can you hear me? Okay, great. So in the context then of how we kind of move forward, we feel not enough customers are getting to the point where they're giving an element of, you know, focus to, if you like, more granularity, more personalization. Really, that's where it kind of starts to bring in that notion. So why is personalization important? And if you look at this little scenario, it's just an analogy, but in that context, here we have a bunch of guys, I think it is, and they're kind of running in their, sorry, they're doing their Ironman, which is great. And they've all kind of got here this morning. They've kind of jumped in the water, and they're doing the first part of their Ironman. But if you think about all these guys, they have a common goal. They want to get to the sort of like the end point. Maybe some of them want to win it. Some want to do a personal best. Some just want to get round. But the idea of personalization is to say, well, even in this bunch of guys, we've got people who like white goggles. And this particular guy that we see here, if you look over here, we got a guy who likes a lemon or yellow kind of helmet. That's his notion of personalization. This guy just doesn't feel the cold, so he has got no need for a vest. He's amazing, but good on him. And then we have a crazy guy over here who's doing an Ironman with a canoe, which is really, you know, rule breaking. But you know, this is the diversity of our customers. And if you will, to be able to think about that and put that in the context of, okay, well, so how can I serve these, you know, personalizations of customers better? It becomes a bit of a challenge. But excuse me, what I would argue is that if we don't, then we really are kind of missing a trick. So there are sort of, you know, the definition here of like hyper-personalization is the art and science of using data to deliver more tailored and more targeted content, products, and services. And this idea really is all about getting to the individual of Mike Murphy or John T. Pierce or Justin or Rachel. So from that perspective, being able to understand that I'm dealing with an individual, understanding a lot about that individual, and then, if you will, tailoring the dialogue in self-service to that individual. And that's where we think we see a great opportunity to help our customers deliver the kind of the wonder in the idea of hyper-personalization. Because fundamentally, this is kind of all about data. It's not difficult. It's just getting the right data in the right place to deliver these kind of things to our customers. So we just kind of touched on then the kind of how might this execute, if you will, as a strategy. So 70% of our customers, I beg pardon, 77% of our customers saying valuing their time is important. We kind of heard similar from Justin earlier and John T as well. Where I start to get quite interested now is the context of why like customers contacting me. So collecting information from other channels and other journeys. So this is where I mentioned about data. So, you know, let's just say I see Mike Murphy's coming through into the contact center. I can see his CLI. I look up into my data systems, and from that I know, A, that it's Mike, B, that it's, has he kind of ordered something recently? Oh, yes, he has. He ordered something yesterday. C, more than likely, I would imagine that the idea why Mike is calling is, you know, if we look at the prediction element, you know, based upon the context, based upon the data, based upon the time, I anticipate Mike is calling about a delivery, perhaps. In that instance, why don't I now, if you like, instead of kind of routing and queuing Mike to the right person to answer the question, we will anticipate what the answer might be, and if you like, offer it to him. And really what we're seeing with the idea of like an omni-channel self-service is bringing that sort of application to life. It may sound, if you will, intimidating because it's personalized, but actually it's not. We're just using the data and we're using it smartly. And I think that's really where we need to kind of help to bring our customers' self-service applications more towards this idea of personalization. Because think about it, if you are a customer and you have ordered something of significance, and you kind of got a, you know, let's say a delivery today, which is, you know, quite important. And I'm talking here about experiences that we have with one of our customers called AO, the guys who deliver white goods, online retailer, a really great brand here in the UK, and they have tremendous success at if you like, customer satisfaction with their complete offering. And really part of that is kind of being very intimate with why the customer is contacting me and what can I do to make that experience really, really seamless. And what they've been very effective at is kind of that anticipation element. They know, they work really hard to understand if the customer is contacting me at this time, is it a delivery issue? Is it a warranty issue? And from that, they're able to kind of predict and prepare the right answer for the customer immediately. And let me say, the results they're experiencing are phenomenal, to the point where they've actually been nominated for a couple of awards, actually 3 awards this year, which is terrific for them as a brand. So very much chasing the kind of omni-channel and personalization strategy, but realizing and achieving great success by doing that. However, we then have kind of like the real world, and I'll kind of build this slide because it's designed to kind of build more slowly, but just let me show you the kind of the salient points. And we kind of come across these kind of objections or challenges within our customers all the time. So, I want to provide a consistent omni-channel experience, but I can't get the personalization because I can't get the data. And this kind of goes back to our single view of the customer that we've often talked about on webinars like this, Jonty. And where can I access the knowledge base or the facts, if you will, of Mike? What has he bought recently? What policies does he have? When are they due for a change? Or just trying to give you the clues on what it might be, the reason why we have this customer contacting us today on whichever channel they choose. Again, that notion of the information silos, I really think is the nugget of Nikki's challenge earlier in that first question, to be honest, is that the customer might be getting information from different sources, and because it's conflicting, they're nervous, and therefore they don't feel confident that actually I better just call and check to make sure. And obviously that generates cost on us. So obviously the solution here is to invest in omni-channel, context-aware channels, bring that kind of strategy into your business, work on lowering the effort for your customers. So like I described about AO, think about why they're calling me, understand through quality and recording the examples of customers contacting me, and identifying those questions that I can start to try and sort of automate. If you're sort of seeing things like increasing call volume length, not utilizing the best agents, getting personalized really very quickly gets you over those hurdles in a very dramatic way. And then often what we see as well is it's certainly around the sort of like the area of the voice self-service applications, an awful lot of old technology out there, Jonty, some very, very old technology, well past end of life. And to be fair, there's probably not necessarily the skills to kind of work with this application in-house. Therefore, people are spending more time and more focus, if you will, on the website, which does make sense. But certainly being able to have those applications secure, PCI compliant, don't forget that, everybody. GDPR is coming around the corner next May. Don't forget that, everybody. There was a nice tip earlier on that was saying about don't ask for information from the customer that you don't actually need. That's really, really going to be underscored when we come into next May with the new European regulations about data protection, because it really sort of challenges brands to think about, why am I asking for this information? Do I really need to use it? Am I going to use it? And if I don't, well, then just don't ask for it, because it's going to give you a headache otherwise. Excuse me. And then lastly, as we kind of turn the corner then on self-service, again, like I mentioned, self-service has got fantastic impacts in business. And I mean like ROIs within months. And I've seen examples of more ROIs kind of within 1 month, but it was kind of just one example in my long tenure in this industry. But really, you should be looking at any spend that you would make in self-service easily being sort of recouped within sort of 6 months, I would say is a very, very conservative estimate. Because ultimately, you're going to get a better first contact resolution, better customer satisfaction. And think about it, we're now starting to impact really into that whole idea of, how many kind of mentions am I getting on Trustpilot? What's the feedback I'm getting through on my NPS scores? And absolutely seeing these and realizing these, like we heard from Justin, these are the measures that the board are now kind of making their decisions upon. And to kind of feed those kind of measures with the right content, self-service is absolutely the enabler to make those things happen. So on reflection, delivering personalized omni-channel interactions, which are as closely automated as we can, we believe will give you that kind of competitive edge going forward. That's my little segment, Jonty. So back to you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Mike. So we've got some quite interesting questions coming in from the audience.
And
let's have a look at some of those coming through.
The first one
has been sent in by Mike, who says, measure how many of your customers who reach your contact center search for a self-service resolution first. This will help you understand how much your customers want self-service and what they weren't able to find answers to. I think that's a very good approach. Here's one for Justin. Hyten says, hi Justin, usually self-service option is more successful for the services which does not require agents to talk. In your vast experience, do you think self-service will work when customers call in for complaints?
Yeah.
I think I might know the answer to this one, Justin, but do you want? I'd be quite interested to see your thoughts on it.
So I saw this question come into the chat room, and honestly, it depends, Johnny. I was thinking about this further. So, for example, my electric utility company, if power goes out, I want to call in to complain that my power is out, right? They actually build it into their self-service. I don't have to talk to a live agent to complain that my power is out. I can go in, and automated system says, thank you, Mr. Robbins, for reporting the outage at my address, and it built in. Either somebody's already notified us, you're the first person to contact us. If we know about it, here's how long it'll take. There, my complaint is handled. I don't have to talk to a person. Different situation would be if I see that there are hundreds or thousands of dollars of fraudulent charges on my credit card and I want to call in to complain. I do not want to talk to a self-service automated system about that. So I think part of it is your business strategy. The other part is the nature of the complaint. There are situations that I do believe self-service could be built to handle complaints, but my personal advice is, by and large, this could become a customer retention issue, and in that case, I want a live agent handling those types of situations.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point there, Justin, that it has to be light touch if you attempt self-service on a complaints line. Make it personalized to what they're calling in, perhaps with a status update, but don't force them down that route. Let's have a look at a couple more tips. Do user testing. Testing with 10 people can help you identify the main usability issues that are getting in the way of people completing tasks online. I certainly like that one. A few tips. Use analytics and data gleaned from searches to build your self-service offering. I certainly think, Mike, analytics is quite useful for gleaning ideas of where things are going wrong.
It really is. I mean, like it's an investment, obviously, for brands to invest in analytics. But if you've got it, absolutely utilize it, and they should be the kind of background strategies you're using to sort of try and glean from your data. Are we sort of seeing patterns that I can justify an ROI on to build a self-service route? But yeah, good example, good tool. Obviously, if you have it, great. If you don't, it's a costly add-on to actually get on board. But well worth it. It brings a lot of other value to the business as well as just finding areas to self-serve.
Indeed. So we've got a couple of other tips coming through. Optimize your self-service channels for your top drivers. I think is quite a nice approach. Christy also says about using analytics. Andrew says offer self-service in both oral and written solution systems, so that it's all inclusive for customers. So I guess that means what self-service you offer on the web, you should probably offer on the phone.
Yeah,
Rob has said. Sorry, then.
Just to provide that consistency, Jonty, between the different sort of ways that customer can access information. If they kind of start to get a hint that the information is conflicting, then they lose confidence. But as long as it's nicely consistent, then your customer will be happy.
Yes. Rob's got an interesting one here. To drive the use of self-service to move customers away from using legacy email addresses, change your email address to a new one and add a bounce back message to the old email address, pointing customers to your self-service pages and eventually cut off the old email address. Extra effort for your customer, but makes them aware of self-service options. So quite an interesting approach there. Well, we've hit the top of the hour now, so that's I'm afraid all we've got time for. The winning tip, who wins our bottle of champagne here, or a box of chocolates, which is from Andrew. Get your agents to try out the various self-service tools. Sometimes you may be surprised at the answers you get, and enables you to refresh the solution. Point to the correct answer links to keep updated through using the tools yourself and continually improve. I think some great ones.
Very good. Congratulations, Andrew.
One or two words, if you'd like to say what did you like best about today's webinar. You can watch the replay, callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. And next week, we're going to be looking at 5 ways to get agents to improve customer experiences. Just like to say thank you to our speakers for all of their insight and experience and advice they've been able to do. So thank you for getting up so early to join us. Justin Robbins from HDI and ICMI. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you to Mike Murphy from Genesis for your insight. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Jonty.
And thank you for everyone for joining us. And thankfully, despite the technical problems, we've kept the show on the road. So thank you, everyone. And we look forward to joining you all next week then. Thank you very much then. Bye-bye.